Hi, everyone, and welcome to day 7 of our holiday self-care event, 12 days of holiday self-care. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that is quite nuanced. I'm really excited to be diving into it. And it's going to be about navigating loneliness and finding connection during the holidays. So we're going to dive into maybe some strategies to look at loneliness and foster maybe some meaningful connections, even when you're alone. So we have Cheryl Simoens with us today, and she is a therapist on our team. We're so happy to have you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
And maybe, Cheryl, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and explain what you do as a therapist and how maybe what you do ties into our topic today?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, as you said, I'm a therapist with a little nutrition and practicing for a few years now. And I definitely come across a lot of context around loneliness, especially over the holidays. A lot of times it's the expectations we place on ourselves, high expectations, or just the stress of everything that's kind of compiled upon us around Christmas time, the current things we have to do like work and school and routine, plus the Christmas visits and the holidays and the meals and the presents. So there's in this a lot of loneliness and even anxiety and depression can occur for many, many people. And so it is so important to have that self-compassion at this time of year, right? Even when we're surrounded by others, to find those meaningful connections in various ways and to kind of understand the things that are happening to us, making us feel lonely. Maybe there even can be some negative beliefs about ourselves that allow us or that create feelings of increased loneliness. And like I said, some other negative emotions and experience that go along with that. So I like to kind of dive into finding connection, finding meaningful connection, different ways that maybe we haven't even thought about where we can find connection. And just exploring it curious around the loneliness and around what can help us during this time of year that's typically more stressful and there are more things going on for all of us. And even just like loss and grief and things like that, traditions that are different this time of year. So that's a little bit of what I do in sessions.
Excellent. Well, we're so happy to have you on our team because as dietitians, we're definitely not trained to support clients that deep when it comes to issues, those emotional underpinnings, especially around this time of year. So it's important to connect with people, your healthcare team when needed. So well, let's dive into today's topic, and I'm just going to maybe navigate today around maybe asking you questions, and you can kind of share how you work with clients and maybe some of the tips that you would give based on the questions that I ask. So let's start off. Cheryl, maybe you can share with me some of the common reasons people might feel extra lonely this time of year, the holiday season, even if they may be surrounded by a lot of people. They're not necessarily like in a remote community up north by themselves. Like they're in amongst the hustle and bustle, but still have this sense of loneliness.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can be the most confusing time when we have many people around us, but we still feel this sort of sense of loneliness, essentially, right? A lot of the times, those beliefs, like those, I should be doing this, I should do this, I have to do this, those shoulds can really create increased sense of loneliness. Like I should and I want to make the best meal and the perfect dessert and get the right gifts for everyone. And those feelings that we have, even though we have lots of family around us, can lead to greater loneliness, greater feelings like anxiety and depression, right? Those experiences. Also, maybe there's something going on with ourselves, like maybe we have low self-esteem, lack of confidence. There's internal negative beliefs that we have that become more deep and more increased around this time of year, right? So it's not so much the fact that we have a lot of people around us, it's more so something internally. And perhaps it's even missing things like traditions, a particular dish that someone made who we've lost last year or recently or a couple of years ago. It's even just missing those traditions and those people. While we have other family and other friends, we really have this sense of loneliness because that connection is missing. And maybe they're a big part of our holidays. So it's that idea of I should be doing this. I want to make the perfect meal, get the perfect gift. Negative beliefs, insecurities about ourselves, or even things like grief and loss, where traditions might be missing, right? Those feelings leading to loneliness and depression, and just feeling a little confused as to why, what's going on, what we're feeling inside. So those are just sort of a few of the examples that could lead to loneliness while we're amongst and surrounded by others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It took me a while to kind of recognize my own sense of loneliness. Like, I'm married and I have kids, and I feel like I never get a break from people around me. But there's, especially around the holiday season, there it kind of comes and goes, but a kind of persistent poking around loneliness. And it's really related to those maybe holiday traditions, or just even those expectations that maybe are not being met, and I know aren't ever going to be met. And it's interesting to just kind of know that they're there, lean into it. But I look forward to hearing more about the different strategies that people can use to navigate this. So maybe my next question would be, can you share some strategies for fostering that sense of connection and belonging when someone's maybe feeling physically alone or even mentally alone, like I was saying, during these holiday season?
Absolutely. I want to emphasize first that it can be critical to kind of, when we do feel these feelings of loneliness, even though we're with others, to kind of go inside and think about, what it is that first of all, what it is that it might be, right? What it is, why we're feeling lonely. Because if there is a sense of feeling lonely, we're not alone. It is a very human response and experience, especially around holiday seasons, to feel this way, right? It's a very human experience. So if we can first look to acknowledge and accept it, we can kind of move beyond and work towards repair, right, for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of a first step I always like to explain to anybody that I see, right, at this time of year who might feel lonely. It's very common. It's a human experience. And first step is to acknowledge and accept, if we can, to move towards repair. So, and repair meaning, what might help, trying different strategies that might help. So finding meaningful connection. Maybe it's looking at spending one-on-one time with someone, a family member or a friend, right? There's often big groups and gatherings, and hopefully we have a little bit of time for holidays and time off, so that we can connect one-on-one with someone, and really, especially with someone who else that might be struggling. It's so valuable to have an experience that others are sharing and experiencing as well. But just finding that meaningful connection with one person, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing is maybe getting creative. Perhaps it's even going outside of family and friends. Maybe it's spending some time volunteering, going to a soup kitchen or the hospital, and giving to others. That might help create meaningful connections. Maybe it's going to, I'm not sure. I love animals. I love dogs. Maybe it's even finding a connection with animals and going to an animal shelter and taking a few hours and taking time to spend with the animals in the kennels, right? That can foster a sense of connection to an other living human being, or not human, but animal being. So there's different ways such as that, but it's also maybe if we're finding that when we look inwards and it's maybe that we're missing someone or there's a loss in our life, maybe thinking about what they brought to the table, so to speak, in terms of a meal. So maybe we find a connection with others in our family because we start making that traditional meal or whatever that reminds us of the one we lost. And then we can share in a meaningful connection around food, right? Or around connection with sort of dinner time and meal time with others at the table. Maybe even just sharing the positive things going around the table and sharing positive things of experiences and memories of that person, right? Mm-hmm. Reaching out and connecting to others at the table or in a friend group or whoever it is that might be that person that's lost, and finding meaning and connecting with what you remember about that person with others. Or, if there's sort of a loneliness around wanting to create a space in your home where you can share the holiday festive meal or experience. Maybe it's hosting yourself or having a potluck and hosting at your house and kind of bringing that feeling, that experience, that time together yourself. So there's numerous ways where we can kind of find that meaningful connection once we sort of look inwards and sort of acknowledge and accept what might be going on for us, right? Reflection. So those are a few ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I think about loneliness around the holiday season, I don't have much lived experience, but I moved out to Manitoba when I was pretty young, 17, 18, and got married and divorced by the time I was 20 and living on my own. And I don't think I ever allowed myself to lean into the loneliness, if that made sense. Like I just kept myself busy. That was the time where I have time off work and I would paint the living room or do like a major home reno or something that was in my time. And I have to wonder what it would have been like to just, acknowledge those feelings and realize that I don't necessarily have to, I guess, overextend myself doing a bunch of activities, but that's kind of how I got through it. I remember trying to invite people over for dinner, and I like cooking. Not everybody does, so it's kind of hard, but maybe order in and invite people out.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the opportunity to connect with people, which might be a possibility, is there opportunity to maybe find connection online?
For sure. Absolutely, there would be. I do often warn around, if there's loneliness, sometimes social media can be the wrong avenue in terms of seeing other people's happy memories and then things that are going on. But from a more positive perspective, I mean, if we go online, for example, we can start, like, one thing, researching places that we could maybe be a part of, a community, right, if you will. Like maybe it's through sports, maybe it's through art, maybe it's through like classes, right? Maybe it's through dance. Maybe it's through that in terms of going online and researching. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with, if social media isn't a trigger, there's nothing wrong with going online and sending out a Merry Christmas message. You never know what comes back, right? Like just kind of reaching out from that perspective on social media. Maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's Snapchat, right? Maybe, who knows? Maybe it's, those new TikTok is another one, kind of going on and sharing a little like cheers, or maybe there's a little image of baking that you can kind of share on your screen with the counter, like if you're baking, if that's what you love doing. So you can definitely connect and see what comes back, right? You can definitely connect online and do research online and see what kind of opportunities around the holidays or just in general. So there's definitely a capacity to go online and find community. For sure, absolutely. And I'm probably missing numerous other ways too to find connection, meaningful communities online, for sure.
Yeah, I find some of the interests that I have outside of nutrition and what we do here. I'm part of different online groups, and often I feel like connected, even though I may have never met any of these people, just through conversation and sharing. I've shared a few times that I've picked up the hobby of sewing. So I'm part of all of these like sewing circles online. And it's kind of fun to share what you're working on, and maybe even the family tradition or the meaning behind what you're working on. But it's just one way that I thought, I know I find social connection that way.
Absolutely.
So the next question here is, I think we've touched a little bit on it too, but self-compassion and self-care really play a big role in supporting ourselves around loneliness. So how can people practically incorporate this into their holiday routine as they go amongst, like, being even around large groups of people and still having this maybe sense of loneliness? How can they use self-compassion for self-care to help them?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, that the loneliness around, even amongst others. So I often say to my clients, in terms of self-compassion, we don't do this enough, but what would you tell a friend? Like, what would you tell a friend who's going through and feeling the same way you feel and the experience you have,
I
right? Because
say
we don't do that
a
enough.
friend, but then I also say a pet
Yeah.
or a child, because not
Yes.
everybody maybe resonates like with good experiences with friends, but maybe
Yes.
they do with a pet, right? And or a child. What would you say
Right.
to the kiddo down the street?
Absolutely. It's about kind of cultivating that genuinely friendly, kind voice, right? And maybe it's even a grandmother. Maybe it's even a grandmother who's passed. What would she tell you? Or what would
Yeah.
your grandfather tell you? Someone, what would they say to you, right? We don't often do that. Our voice for ourselves is so much more critical than our voice for others. In certain situations where there's negative feelings or experiences happening. But self-compassion is so huge. I highly recommend looking up. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on her name. She does a lot of research on Kristen Neff on self-compassion. Kristen Neff, Neff. She's a huge researcher on self-compassion and how to use it and what it looks like, and that voice of a friend or a pet or a family member and what they would say to you, right? That removing that critical voice and replacing it with that caring voice. And self-care can be so different for others. Something else I like to experiment with and explore with clients is, what type of person are you? Do you enjoy being quiet and reading? Do you enjoy physical activity and movement? Do you enjoy the outdoors, even at this time of year, right? Self-care can look like a walk in, the winter wonderland forest somewhere by your path. It can look like, and I mean, this is a time of being alone and maybe reflecting as well, because I know, there's loneliness even when you have friends and family around. But the other aspect is maybe being amongst other people is exhausting and you need a break on your own, right? So reading, spending some time quietly reading or going outdoors. If you have a pet, right? Spending some time alone with the pet, going for walks. Self-care can look like spending that extra half hour in bed and allowing ourselves to do that and not needing to get up and get going, right? That can be self-care as well. And the other side of it is when we think about a kind voice, it can really help our self-esteem, those negative beliefs that sometimes we have and that get more pervasive and worse over the holidays, which is what can lead us to confusion around loneliness when we're around others. It's that internal experience. But when we turn it into compassion and genuine care, it can shift the way we believe about ourselves, how we experience internally what's going on for us. It's so hard, but the more we practice it, I always say the more you practice it is like riding a bike, learning to ride a bike, right? It's really hard at first and you're going to fall, and that's okay. But you get back on and you practice it again and again and again. Even if you fall off 50 times, and even if it's really hard the first 50 times, if we try again, and we use it as that bike analogy, it can get easier and better. So self-care, taking the time to go to the gym and work out or dance class or whatever it might be, right? That self-care of movement, of quiet peace, reading, going outdoors, right? Being with that pet, whatever it might be, that friendly, genuine care voice. Those are a few pieces that I work with when this happens.
I feel like those are very two key aspects to, managing feelings of loneliness this time of year. When we think about maybe others, what advice would you have for those who want to support a loved one struggling with loneliness during the holiday season? Maybe themselves are not struggling with loneliness, but they know of someone that is? And what are some meaningful ways to reach out and provide support?
Yes. Sometimes we feel like we need to say the right thing or do the right thing or kind of sort of fix it. And I say that in quotations, like fix it, the problem, right? For others that are experiencing kind of a negative or difficult time. So I often use Brene Brown when I think about this topic. So she's a researcher with a PhD on shame and vulnerability and connection. And she has this cute little video that you can watch online on the internet. And when someone is going through difficult time, the best thing that we can do for them is to kind of literally, and the little rabbit goes down the little ladder and into the hole, we can literally climb down into the hole with someone else. And we don't have to say anything. All we have to do is show them that we're there. An arm around them, a phone call, how are you doing? Just sit with them in their difficult experience and allow them to feel heard as they're sharing what's going on if they're willing to share. We don't need to say anything. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to fix the problem. We just simply need to say, we're here and I see you. Mm-hmm. And let me listen. That's all we really need to do. She has there's a few quotes, but one of the quotes that really resonates with me from Brene Brown is this. Connection is the energy that is created between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. When we can give and receive without judgment. And I really love that quote because it just shows exactly that sitting with someone and not having to do anything, but just sitting with them in their difficult time. I feel like that's the number one thing I tell people around helping others and being there for others who are struggling, right? And then it's that self-compassion as well, right? Yeah.
I guess if we haven't experienced loneliness ourselves and we want to reach out to somebody, like without really knowing the lived experience of that individual, going in there and trying to offer advice or solutions or help can really not feel affirming to others. But just, you can't really screw up listening.
Yeah.
Being there for somebody and just, hey, like, I'm there for you. So you might even be able to ask people like, what do you need? How can I help? Put it back to them to find out, what they need from you. And then you get to decide if you're able to support. But sending out unsolicited advice, I don't think is helpful.
Yeah. And I like that too, that choice. Like, how can I help you? I can, give you this or get this for you or get this for you, and giving them some options. So maybe when they're struggling with their own anxiety and experience, they don't have to think about, right, how you can help them. So I love that too. And sometimes people don't have a lot of choice with the struggles they're experiencing. So if you give them choice of, can I bring you this meal, bring you some coffee or X, right? And you give them a choice, maybe they'll say, I'd love a coffee.
Yeah.
I love that.
So those are some great tips, Cheryl. I really appreciate us diving into this conversation. You help navigating this conversation. I think it's especially true for those who maybe are with people or have people in their life, but still have that sense of loneliness that comes up, just to recognize that there's so much pressure this time of year. Really lean in, maybe journal about it, see if you can find out maybe what might be the root to that emotional underpinning, and reach out if you need support. I know that's what we're here for, but reach out to friends, family members, colleagues, people who you feel are safe to maybe share and connect with. But we'll wrap it up from now. Is there any last tips that you might have for us, Cheryl?
I think these are the main ones, and really remembering that self-compassion and that how are you helped in terms of self-care? What do you love about self-care? And a big part of that loneliness feeling too, when we're around others, is, you are building resiliency to that feeling of lonely, right? We are building resiliency when we reflect, when we acknowledge, when we kind of work to help ourselves, right? Or others. And we can stop that negative cycle of thinking too, if we can really accept and acknowledge, become aware of what's going on for us. And therapy is a great tool as well to help explore and get curious about what's happening for you, and to provide more strategies as well. So I think those are the key things. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you so much for hopping on a call today and letting me ask you all of those great questions. And everybody that's listening today, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you tomorrow at our next topic. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.